The table seated 14 and Caroline was in the 7th chair, not at the end. Not at a corner. 2 seats from her brother Marcus, close enough that she could see the way he held his wine glass. Thumb at the base, the way their father had taught him. Close enough that when he stood up, she thought for one ordinary moment that he was reaching for the bread. He was not reaching for the bread. I want to say something, Sup said, and Zapple softened the way tables do when someone stands with a glass. Conversations folded. Forks rested. His wife Rachel looked up at him with that particular expression Caroline had seen at their wedding, at his promotion dinner. At every moment Marcus decided to perform sincerity in public. Caroline had flown 6 hours. She had taken the early flight, the one that left before sunrise, because she didn't want to arrive flustered. She had pressed her dress the night before. She had brought a gift, a framed photograph, their grandmother's handwriting on the back, something she'd spent 3 weeks tracking down through an estate sale in another state. It was sitting on the hallway table near the door, wrapped in paper she'd chosen carefully. She picked up her wine. To the people who actually showed up for me, Marcus said. You know who you are, the ones who were there during the hard years. Who answered the phone, who didn't just show up for the good parts. He looked around the table. He looked at Rachel. He looked at her parents-in-law. He looked at his college friends, 2 of whom Caroline had met exactly once. He looked briefly past her, the way you look past a lamp or a window, or something that simply occupies space without contributing to the view. He raised his glass, the table raised theirs. Caroline's glass was already raised. She lowered it before anyone noticed, or maybe no one would have noticed regardless. She set it down carefully, without sound, and looked at the tablecloth for a moment. White linen, slightly wrinkled near the centerpiece. And then she picked up her fork and set it down again. And then she placed her napkin beside her plate in the slow, deliberate way of someone who has made a decision before they knew they were making one. She thought about the year Marcus's business collapsed, not in a bitter way. It surfaced the way things surface when you've just been winded. Involuntarily, without permission. She thought about the specific Tuesday she had transferred money to his account without him asking, because he wouldn't ask, because asking would require him to admit it. She thought about the voicemails she had left their father on his behalf, carefully worded, when Marcus was too proud to call. She thought about driving 4 hours to help him move out of the apartment he could no longer afford, and how they had eaten gas station sandwiches on the highway and she had pretended not to notice when he cried looking out the passenger window. She thought about none of this out loud. Around the table, people were eating again. Laughter had resumed in the upper register, the light social kind. Somebody complimented Rachel on the centerpiece. Marcus sat back down and accepted a clap on the shoulder from the man beside him. Caroline looked at the faces she recognized. Her cousin Dana, who had known them both since childhood, was studying her water glass with great focus. Her Aunt Margaret was cutting her food into very small pieces. Nobody met her eyes. Not because they were cruel, because looking would have required them to do something about what they saw, and the dinner had a particular momentum now, and it was easier to let it carry them forward. This is the part that settled into her chest differently than his words had, the collective decision to let it stand. She finished her meal. She spoke when spoken to. She laughed at something someone said about a vacation because it was genuinely funny. She hugged Rachel goodbye. She found her coat. She paused at the hallway table near the door, looked at the wrapped frame sitting there where she'd left it and picked it up and took it with her. She did not make a scene. She did not want to make a scene. That was not the decision she had made at the dinner table with the napkin in her hands. The decision was quieter than that. More permanent. 3 weeks later she sat in a law office on the 4th floor of a building downtown. Mark sat across the room. They had not spoken since the dinner. He had texted once. "Hope you got home okay," the kind of message that functions as proof of contact rather than communication. She had not replied. Their father had died 8 months earlier. The estate was straightforward, the will clean, but their father had also left a letter, something the lawyer, a composed woman named Helen, had been instructed to read aloud at the first meeting where both children were present. Helen read it. It was not long. Their father had not been a man of long letters, but he had been, in his quiet way, a man who noticed things, and the letter reflected that. He wrote about Marcus with love and with gentleness and with the particular tenderness of a parent who understands a child's weaknesses without naming them as flaws. And then he wrote about Caroline. He listed things. Not as a ledger, as a witness. He wrote about the Tuesday she had called him about Marcus's account before Marcus had said a word. He wrote about the 4-hour drive. He wrote about a moment from 15 years ago that Caroline had completely forgotten. Something she had done for Marcus when they were young. Something small, the kind of thing that vanishes from the memory of the person who does it, and stays forever with the person who receives it. She has always shown up, he wrote. I want that said out loud in a room, so it cannot be undone. Helen finished reading. The room was very quiet. Carolyn looked at the middle distance, the wall just past the lawyer's shoulder, a patch of pale paint, unremarkable. She felt something move through her that was not quite grief and not quite vindication. Something more tired than either. Something that had been waiting a long time to be allowed to rest. She thanked Helen. She accepted her copy of the letter, folded it twice, and placed it in her bag. Marcus said her name, once. In the hallway as she walked toward the elevator. She heard it, she pressed the button, watched the doors close. She did not feel victorious. She felt the way you feel at the end of a very long trip. Not quite home yet but finally, undeniably, headed in the right direction.